Vivian, I suggest we start, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Thank you, and welcome to this webinar on the subject of closing the job search. My name is Ansi Harford. I am the manager for the MasterCard Foundation Scholars at Africa Careers Network. And this seminar on closing the job search is the third in a series of webinars, that we've organized at Africa Careers Network for ACN users who are seniors, who are in their last year at university and who are thinking about what next. If you recall, we held a webinar earlier this year on planning the job search. That was typically around 6 to 10 months before you graduate. The purpose of that webinar was really around, what are your career interests? What is specific about you that might inform your choices and your career choices after graduation? The second webinar we held was around executing on the job search. That was typically 3 to 6 months before you graduate. That was around the nitty-gritty of the application process, writing a good CV, writing a good cover letter, targeting organizations, how to interview effectively with organizations, how to reach out to your network, how to follow up with persistence and professionalism. And this is the final webinar in this series on the job search, and this is really around closing the job search. What happens between 0 and 3 months before you graduate? What happens when you get an offer, a verbal versus written offers, and what to do if you don't have an offer yet? So we'll be running through each of those themes in a little bit more detail. The idea here is that I'm going to present for about 15 minutes, and then we're going to turn it over to you guys in the audience. If you have any questions relating to the job search, closing the job search, we're happy to take questions at the end. So keeping it fairly brief and quick on my end and turning over to you if there are any questions. So the main subject that we're going to be covering today, as I mentioned earlier, is what happens when you get a job offer. The difference between verbal versus written offers, response timelines, how long you should wait before you respond. Should you accept the offer? Obviously, that's an important issue, and obviously we'll be talking about issues around money, salaries, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, what happens if you don't have a job offer? We'll be going into that as well. The most important message I think that we at ACN wanted to convey to you today is that getting a job offer is actually an enormous privilege. As I was reflecting today on unemployment rates, I was thinking that I was looking at the unemployment rates in the Western world, typically in Europe and the United States, is between 5 and 10%. Youth unemployment in Africa is around 50%. And as I was reflecting on my own career, which spans over 20 years, I counted up the number of job offers that I had had, and this was coming out of a really good university with a very good degree. And I counted a total of 4 job offers so far in my 20-year career, 3 of which I accepted and 1 of which I rejected. So I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective that there are a huge number of people, millions and millions of people looking for a job, and that actually getting an offer is something that doesn't happen very often in your life. So make sure you feel grateful and privileged when it does happen, because it's a rare occurrence. And it basically means that an organization and on the phone, and will extend a verbal offer to you over the phone. Now, that is typically the first step in the process. We obviously recommend when that happens that you show enthusiasm and gratitude for the offer. And the first thing I think you should be asking them is, when can I expect to receive a written offer? Because a verbal offer, unfortunately, is not a valid offer. And we've had several examples at ACN of people who've received verbal offers and thought that the job was in the bag, and then for some reason the organization changes their mind, or they have different priorities, or they have budget cuts or something, and the written offer never comes through. So an offer is not an offer unless it's in writing, unfortunately, and make sure you get that written offer. When you get the written offer, typically it'll come in through email as an attachment with the terms and conditions of employment. you should acknowledge receipt of the offer in writing within 24 hours of receiving it. Once again, we encourage you to be grateful and say so in the acknowledgement email, and let them know that you'll get back to them shortly with your decision. Now, very few offers actually have a written deadline in them. Now, it does happen that some offers come and say this offer is valid until, and there's a date, but most offers actually don't have a date black on white in the offer letter. However, all offers have an implicit deadline, all right, and that implicit deadline is around 1 week after receipt. If you wait to get back to the organization more than 1 week after you receiving the offer, you can run the risk of looking unprofessional towards the organization. So it's absolutely okay to have questions about the offer. You might have questions on the specifics of the role, what exactly you'll be doing. Is there travel involved? The offer might have a series of benefits included in there, and you might want some clarification on the benefits. That's all absolutely fine. It is also okay to ask for an extension and to say, you know, look, I still need to think about it. I'm interviewing with other organizations. You know, can I have until date X to come back to you? And that is completely normal and completely acceptable to do that. You should aim at the latest to get back to the organization within a week or 2 weeks if you ask for an extension. We'll come on to this subject in a while, but we highly recommend that you do not negotiate on your starting salary, that you can negotiate on other things, and we'll come on to that in a while. The important thing here is please keep your ACN manager copied at all times on the updates and your emails with the partner organization. Money matters. Obviously, salaries is an important topic of job offers and in your decision on the job that you take after graduating from universities. You will all know that US salaries are higher than salaries in Africa. These are adjusted for cost of living, right? So you might have fairly large salaries in the United States. Just be aware that the cost of living in a big city like New York or somewhere on the West Coast will eat up most of that salary, and the cost of living in Africa is significantly lower compared to living in the United States. So bear that in mind when receiving your offers, especially if you receive offers from African organizations and organizations based in the US. We've given you a couple of benchmarks, rough salary benchmarks for different types of roles in the US and in Africa. Obviously, be aware that roles with NGOs and nonprofits earn typically lower salaries, and that's understandable. That's just the world of NGOs, and at that point you obviously need to trade off the potential satisfaction that you can get from working in an NGO versus the salary that you could make in, say, a profit-making or a corporate organization. The one thing that we do want to mention, and that's really important, is in our experience we found that jobs based in Africa typically provide more opportunities to work with senior leadership and also more senior roles. I'm going to give you a concrete example. When I was the director of ACN, I was called about 1.5 years ago by a large organization, a retailer in South Africa, who was calling us because they wanted to hire a young Nigerian from Africa Careers Network, so one of our ALA graduates or MasterCard Foundation scholars, and they wanted to train them for 1 year or 2 in South Africa to become the general manager of their operations in Nigeria. So they wanted to hire one of our university graduates and train them to set up and run their entire operation in Nigeria. I can assure you that is not an opportunity that you would get in the United States. And this is something that we have seen time and time again at ACN. Because there is such a shortage, of talented African human capital like yourselves, the level of responsibility that you get in Africa is typically higher than you would get in a US job. The one thing that is really important for us as we are building up knowledge of the market in Africa is if you do get an offer, please share if you're comfortable doing that. We will treat the information confidentially, but it is really important for us to be able to build up a bank of information for ACN users this year and in the years to come to help advise on salaries within Africa and help give you data on salaries in Africa. So the more you can share with us confidentially, the more we can build up a database and put it to the good use of the entire network. One of the most important issues that you're going to face is your starting salary. And here we're fairly clear that you should not negotiate your entry-level salary. The organization is giving you an opportunity to work for them, as I mentioned earlier, based on a few interviews, right? So they are taking a risk in hiring you. They have no idea if you're going to be worth the money that they're going to be paying you. And the point here is that you've not proved yourself yet, right? You have not done a day of work yet for them. So our advice to you is take the salary and prove through your work that you're worth a lot more than what they're paying for you. You will be in a much stronger negotiating position after having worked for 12 months than at the beginning, just before you've even started work. And I'm going to give you an example here of an ACN user who I was advising last year, who received a really rather fantastic offer to work in West Africa from an organization. And she had just taken a negotiating class at college. And she received an offer and she thought, hey, let me test out my negotiating skills that I've just learned. And she negotiated on the starting salary and succeeded in really annoying the organization that had made her the offer, to the point that the organization actually withdrew the offer, right? So organizations do not expect, it's considered unprofessional for you to negotiate your starting salary, and therefore we highly recommend you do not do it. Offers can be withdrawn if you do not behave in a professional manner, so please be aware of that and manage your personal brand from the outset with the organization. There are other things that you can negotiate on, right? You can negotiate on starting dates. If there's, for example, something that you've always wanted to do before you start your job, you can say, actually, could I start in a couple of months' time, please, because I really want to go and do X before I start. You can negotiate, for example, on some benefits, like if they're offering you a relocation package. That is something that you can negotiate on. But we highly recommend that you don't negotiate on your entry-level salary. Sorry, I think I must have missed a slide here. Yes. The key question, obviously, is, should I take the job? That's one of the important things that you're going to have to face. Now, as we said to you earlier, getting a job offer is an enormous privilege. Think of me with my 4 job offers, right, in my 20-year career. There's no perfect job out there. That is one of the most important things. And what I've heard several ACN users mention when I'm advising them on their career choices, they say, well, actually, I'm really looking for something that is like this, and that I really want it to be like that. And they kind of give me their laundry list of their ideal job. Now, it's all very well and good to have an ideal job, but any job that you get will not tick all the boxes. I promise you that. So it'll have some positives and it'll have some negatives. And therefore, the key is for you to do as much research as you possibly can on the organization. Reach out to people in your network or the ACN directory. Talk to people who work there. Try and find out as much as you can about the organization, about the culture, about the work ethic, about your professional development. How well is that? That's important, and that's information that you can get from talking to somebody who works at the organization. What opportunities could this job lead you to, right? This is important. Does this job open doors for you in terms of your long-term goal, or does it close doors for you? And if it closes doors for you, is that a big deal or not? So ultimately, it's not an easy decision to decide whether you're going to take the job or not, but you can, obviously, there are many questions that you can ask yourself to help you with the decision. And in particular, one of the most useful things I have found when I was deciding whether to take my job offers or not was I would typically talk to people who know me well and who I respect and admire. I had mentors in my life who helped me. You have a list of ACN managers who can help you in your job decision. So don't hesitate to reach out to all of those people in your life to help them talk through the decision with you. We've been through salaries, we've been through starting salaries. What happens if you don't yet have a job offer, right? So here, the most important message here is don't panic, okay? It's still early on in the process for many, many organizations. You might have seen your colleagues at university interviewing in September and getting a job offer in December or January. Those are the large corporates that have very well-oiled recruitment processes. There are many organizations who don't even think about recruiting at this point yet. So it's still early on in the process for many organizations. Speak to your ACN manager. Again, that's the #1 recommended route that we would say to you. Consider all available options, for example, including a long-term internship. We found that for people who graduate from university and don't have a job yet or haven't found anything, sometimes just getting into a long-term internship can really help for several reasons. First of all, because that long-term internship can and does fairly often lead to a job offer. But not just that, there is no better time to get a job than when you already have one. Because when you have a job offer, studies have shown that you are more successful and more able to get a job because you are more confident, you interview better, and generally you are in a position where somebody else is already hiring you, and that makes you more attractive generally. So consider doing a long-term internship as well. And then finally, in terms of personality traits, don't give up or don't feel despondent, right? Looking for a job is really difficult. It requires tenacity, perseverance, and self-belief. And in the end, we encourage you to trust that you'll end up in the right place. Things generally work out in the end. And I'm going to end on one of my favorite quotes from the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, which says, "Everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, that means it is not the end." And I think that is something that I try to live by in my own life. So I will stop there. I will just finally show you some pictures of the team, just in case you need a reminder of who you need to reach out to. And I will turn it over now to you for questions. If you have questions, just type them in the questions panel. We'll give you a couple of minutes, and then we'll take whatever questions you may have. Vivian, can you see if there are any questions?
No, right now I cannot see any questions.
Okay. We can wait another couple more minutes, and if there are no questions, then we can close.
There's a question. If I can go ahead and read that to you.
Sure.
So this comes from, the question says, I've received an offer and I'm in the process with another company. I've accepted the said offer, but what's the best way to inform the company while maintaining good relationship moving forward?
That's a great question. And in fact, I had wanted to touch on that issue. This raises several issues. The first issue it raises is the fact that you might get an offer from an organization that is your second or third favorite option, and you still want to hold out and wait until you hear back from your first preferred option. And unfortunately, that's something that's not generally possible. Generally, you just have to make a decision, even if it's not your favorite option, and that's where the career counseling and the mentoring really comes in. And it's unfortunate sometimes when your least preferred option comes through before your first preferred option. But that, I'm conscious that that's not the question that is being asked here, but it's something that I wanted to touch on. Here, the question is, I've received an offer and I've accepted the offer, but I'm still in the process with another organization. This is completely normal, and organizations are used to this, and it happens the whole time. So the best way to deal with this, and I think there are some examples on the ACN Learning Center, the best way to deal with this is to either call up if you've been having a telephonic relationship, or to send an email to the person you've been involved with in the organization, and just explain that you've received another offer from an organization that you're planning to accept. It is generally best not to mention the name of the organization that you're going to work with unless you have a very good relationship with the person you're interviewing with. If the person you're interviewing with has kind of become a mentor to you and you've got a fairly close relationship, it's fine to say, I've actually accepted an offer with an organization called Symbian based in South Africa, and the reason I'd like to accept it is X, Y, and Z. That's fine, but that's very much the exception rather than the rule. You would typically say, just send an email and say, I just wanted to let you know I have received and accepted an offer with another company. And then you can go on to explain that you've decided to accept that offer because it fits exactly with your career aspirations. And then the most important thing is at the end to express your gratitude to the organization for having given you the time to interview with them and having considered you as a candidate. And you can say that you would very much like to remain in touch with them, because remember that you're constantly working on your network, right? So you can say at the end, I very much would like to, I hope that we can remain in touch and meet in the future again. And that will be completely acceptable to the organization. Really well, and it'd be lovely to stay in touch with you. So there's no reason why you shouldn't include that person in your professional network if they have been relatively close to you. I think there are examples of these kinds of letters on the ACN Learning Center, and if they're not, we'll make sure that we get a couple of those examples up there. I think there are no further questions at this point. Vivian, I think we should probably close.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there are any more questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And I think that the most important message that we wanted to give you is that we are here for you. So if you want to discuss anything, any aspect of the job search or closing or offers, please feel free to reach out to us by email or by phone. The team is here and we're here to help you. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Ansi. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.